Hi, I'm Tim. Welcome to Watchbox, and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email me, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. It's in the description below. It's your purchase and pricing email question line for buying this or any watch you see on any Watchbox platform. Reach out to me directly, tmosso at thewatchbox.com. Okay, today we're discussing one of the most discussed watches of the last year. This is the new for 2020 41mm white gold Rolex Oyster Perpetual Submariner Date. This is the 126619LB Lunette Bleu, the first ever combination on a Submariner of white gold, the blue ceramic bezel insert, and a black lacquer dial. This timepiece is larger, though not much larger than its predecessor, at 41 millimeters in diameter by 12.3 millimeters thick by 48.2 millimeters lug-to-lug. And then if you add the end links here, it is 51.2 millimeters across the wrist with a 21 millimeter spacing between the lugs. So that's the link-to-link span, 51.2 millimeters. Throwing it on my wrist, which remains 16 centimeters in circumference in spite of the holidays. You can see that the watch wears easily. Comfortable watch. It has the same footprint as the prior Submariner. If you can wear that, you can wear this. There is no difference. In fact, the biggest change of dimensions is the link-to-link span, and the difference as I measure it is only 0.7 millimeters. The watch is still shallow enough on the wrist that you can cuff it fairly easily and wear it with a dress sleeve. And as you can see from overhead, I have plenty of clearance down the barrel. There's plenty of clearance on either side of my wrist. Now, taking a quick look at the composition, you can see that this is gray gold. Rolex makes its own gold. It has its own foundry. It makes its own cases, bracelets, and clasps. And the alloy used is an 18-karat white gold alloy that is homogeneous, white all the way through, never rhodium plated, nor need it be rhodium plated, and this is known as gray gold in the industry. So if you scratch it, there's just more white metal underneath. It's still the Oyster bracelet, 3-link design, polished centers, polished flanks, satin shoulders, removable links fixed by screws as ever. What doesn't change is the presence of the glide lock system, 20 millimeters of adjustment in 2 millimeter increments. It can be used for fine sizing, but also as an all or nothing fold out over a dive suit. Polished center, down the center, polished flanks, satin shoulders, and you've got the Oyster system with a double lock. So you've got a beacon to hook internally, and that locks once. You can see it latch, and then you've got the clamshell with a little kerf underneath the crown so you can dig your nail in and easily lift the clamshell up. Rolling over to the case, not much changes here. The big visual change is the tapering of the lugs. These are no longer as squared off as they were on the initial Super Case sub. Most of the Super Case, in terms of the squared off ends and the sheer sides, still intact, but the lugs now come to more of a point rather than seeming blockish and broad, and that's achieved by expanding the size of the link within the lugs, taking 0.5 millimeter off each side. The flanks are all of high polish, the tops of the lugs are satin finished, and then the bezel is a combination of satin and polish, and it has a wonderfully sharp knurling that makes it a pleasure to grip and easy to grip even if your hands are wet, sweaty, or gloved. The bezel remains 120 click. Let's hear it. Sharp and yet silky. It's that alchemy of the Rolex bezel that draws me to these. They are the best in the business for total feel and refinement. Now, there is a luminescent pearl. You can line it up with the minute hand, which is great as an impromptu 0 to 60 minute timer. I find this more useful than a chronograph, and I believe a lot of folks are going to find the same, as chronographs generally only feature a 30-minute register. Here you get 60 minutes, and if you're timing anything longer than that, in general, it's going to be a rarity. Everything I time with a chronograph generally is between 0 and 60 minutes, and there's no downstream maintenance cost for a chronograph mechanism with a dive bezel. Ceramic insert, scratch resistant, in blue, and you can see that all the indices are actually filled with platinum, both for contrast and resistance to tarnishing over time. The dial, as with new Rolexes debuting post-2018, features a little Rolex crown between Swiss and made at 6 o'clock, a black lacquer base, and white gold hands and indices, so they will never tarnish or oxidize. There is blue Rolex Chromolite lume. There is a trip-lock crown, still screw down, 300 meters water resistant, and a solid case back made of solid white gold. Now, inside, a new movement. Caliber 3235. 70-hour power reserve. It features a Liga-formed chronergy escapement, which is basically Rolex's answer to the Omega coaxial. You've got the 70-hour reserve beating away at 8 beats per second, pivoting on 31 joules. There's a hacking second and a quick set function for setting the watch. It has a full balance bridge with a free-sprung index for shock resistance, but this movement also gains Rolex's Paraflex shock protection system, and in a change from the 3135 movement, we now have a rotor holding the winding bearing, or I should say a rotor with a bearing for the winding system rather than the previous jeweled staff. So a rotor bearing is more durable and less likely to fracture than a jeweled staff. So this is a more shock-tolerant movement inherently. There's also an overcoil hairspring, a Breguet profile made by hand to allow the watch to achieve chronometer certification, but then Rolex takes and recases the chronometer certified movement, adjusts it in 6 positions, and certifies it internally as a superlative chronometer, which means the watch will run at least -2 plus 2 seconds per day or better as a fully cased up watch from the factory. Finally, there is a parachrome blue hairspring. So the hairspring is Breguet overcoil, but it's made of a blue oxidized niobium zirconium alloy that Rolex calls parachrome blue, which is highly anti-magnetic. Reach out to me, tmosso at thewatchbox.com for purchase and pricing details. And we're back with the white gold Submariner.